is part 3 in my composition workout series. Now, if you recall, in part 2, we talked about simply diatonic chords. We use C as an example just because C is easy to explain because we don't need to talk about sharps or flats or anything, right? So we played all the chords. And we talked about that any note in the scale can be a melody note that could work over basically any of the chords, right? So, I mean, if we look at a B note, for example, remember we're in the key of C. This could be the 7th in C. And that's okay, nothing wrong with that. But it could also be, for example, the sharp 11 in an F major 7 sharp 11. Or the 9th in an A minor 9. Or a 6th in a D minor 13. Right, so we have all sorts of choices for our melody notes, and I'm only talking about diatonic chords. So today we're going to get into what is known as secondary dominant chords, okay? Now, looking at the diatonic palette for the key of C, we have 7 chords, right? Now, look at the dominant chord. That's a G7, right? That G7 is the 5 chord of the 1 chord. Now, this is a very strong cadence in music, that 5-1, right? It really puts that emphasis on where the tonal center is. The 5 wants resolution and it resolves to the 1 chord, okay? But now think about this for a second. The 1 chord is C major. The 2 chord is D minor 7. Now, remember, there's a key of D minor, right? So that means that there's a dominant chord for D minor, and that would be, in this case, A7. So in the key of C, the 5 of the 2 chord is going to be A7. Right? Now, the next is going to be E minor. There's a 5 chord for this, too. It would be B7. Right? What about F? What's the 5 chord of F major 7? It would be C7. What about G7? Or G? Well, D7 is the 5 chord of G. Right? What about the A minor? What's the 5 chord of A? That's E. And the only chord we have left is B minor 7 flat 5. But so I remember being in music theory class and I asked my teacher, is there a 5 chord for B minor 7 flat 5? Is there a secondary dominant for that? And he said, well, no, because there's no key of minor 7 flat 5, right? So there's no 5 chord for it. I mean, you might run across a situation where it is approached by a dominant chord, but generally speaking, there isn't a secondary dominant chord. So anyways, the 1 chord, 5 of the 2 chord, 2 chord, 5 of the 3 chord, 3 chord. Next, the 5 of the 4 chord, 5 of the 5 chord, 5 of the 6 chord. Okay, so those are the secondary dominants. Now, why would you want to use these? Well, because it really emphasizes each of the chords. You're almost like shifting the tonal center to those keys for a brief second. And it's an important tool for composition, and it also shows up a lot in every kind of music, okay? So the next thing that you want to do is you want to look at the chords, the diatonic chords in the key, and you want to see what happens when you turn them into a dominant chord. So, for example, if we took like a C major 7 chord, and turned it to a C7 chord, Well, where's that going to go? It's going to go to the 4 chord. So the 1 chord made dominant is going to be the one of the 4 chord. You see this in blues, but you see in a lot of pop music too. For example, something in the way she moves treats me like no other lover. Well, what happened there? We played C major, that's the 1 chord in C. We turned it into a C major 7 chord, which is also the 1 chord in C. That 7 moves down to a flat 7 and turns that 1 chord into a dominant chord. That would be the 5 of the 4. Where's it going to go? To the 4. Then what happens? Something in the way she moves me. What's that D chord in this case? D minor is a 2 chord. What's that 2 chord made major or dominant? It's the 5 of the 5 chord. So you see what's happening here? This is the genius of secondary dominant chords, okay? So, again, going back, the 1 chord made dominant is the 5 of 4. 2 chord made dominant is the 5 of the 5. 3 chord made dominant 5 of the 6 chord. Right? Now, what if we make the 4 chord dominant? F major 7. It sounds weird, right? That's because there's no B flat chord in the key of C. So that 4 chord made dominant doesn't really want to go anywhere in this key. You see what I'm saying? What if we take that 5 chord, and it's already dominant, so the 1 chord in the key. What about the 6 chord made dominant? It's going to go to the 2 chord. What about, oh, and that's it. Or the 7 chord made dominant makes it the 5 of the 3. Okay, so this is an important feature, and you'll see this kind of thing a lot in all sorts of music, okay? Okay, so the next thing they have to understand is that jazz musicians will often put the 2 chord with that secondary dominant chord, right? So, in other words, you know, if we're talking about the 2 chord, the 5 of the 2 would be A7. But a lot of times, rather than just playing the A7, a lot of jazz composers will play the 2 as well. It could be a minor 7 flat 5 too, right? So like so let's take a song that we sort of know, all right? Let's harmonize it and see what happens if we use secondary dominant. So you know Stand By Me, right? It's a 1-6-4-5-1 song, right? All diatonic chords, right? So, when the night has come and the land is dark and the moon is the only light we'll see, no, I won't be afraid, no, I shed a tear. Well, what happened there? That was the 5 of the 6 chord, right? It's not in the original, but it's just one way of harmonizing it. But remember, there's a 4 chord too. So you could put the 5 of that in. There's a 5 of the 5. So what happens there? No, I won't be afraid, no, I won't shed a tear, just as long as you stand. So I'm not saying if you had done this, that song would sell any more than it did. It probably wouldn't. I don't know, but I'm just saying there's ways to use secondary dominance, right? Now, if you wanted to make it even like fancier, you could put like a 2-5 in front of some of these. You know, no, I won't be afraid. No, I won't shed a tear, just as long as you stand by me. Pretty fancy. It gives the song more like a gospel type of vibe, all right? So that's the way secondary dominant chords work. Okay, so remember, all right, so remember in the last lesson I wrote a diatonic song. Simple because it's diatonic, but I used interesting melody notes. You know, they were a lot of the upper extensions of some of the chords in the key. So I went like this. That's the 3 chord in C major. Phrygian chord. You might need to go to my lesson and check that out, but it's a E flat 9 sus 4 chord. And I went to the 4 chord, which would be F. It's using the sharp 11 as the melody note. That's why it's interesting sound. The 11th of D minor. G13 with the 13 as a melody note. C major with the 9th as a melody note. And then the secondary dominant pops up. That's the C9 sus 4. It's a dominant chord, right? And that's the 1 chord turned dominant, right? Where does that go? That's the 5 of the 4 chord. Which takes us right back to the top. The top is that 4 chord. And at this point, rather than doing G13, the 5 chord, I turn that, what would usually be a B minor 7 flat 5 chord into the 5 of the 3 chord. B9 sus 4. And then that pushes me to E minor for a little bit. A13. That's not in the key, that's the 5 of the 2 chord. D minor 9, that's the 2 chord, right? We just use that 8, I turned that 8 minor chord into an A7 chord, which is the 5 of 2. 2 chord, 9th as a melody note. G7, 5 chord in this key. And I go to A11, minor 11. Then I take that A minor chord, the 6th chord, and turn it into a secondary dominant chord. A9 sus 4 to A. And that pushes me what you would expect to be D minor, the 2 chord, right? Because it's the 5 of the 2. But I take advantage of the situation, the harmonic situation, and I turn it to D major. But not the 1 chord. I don't want to get too confusing here. I go to A major. And but the progression starts on the 4 chord. So it's 4, 5 in D major. I mean A major. 1 in A major. And then I go to this chord. That's D7 sharp 11. Sorry, E flat 7 sharp 11, which is a flat 9 substitution for A7. It seems confusing, but it's not really. That takes you nicely to D. I'll do a lesson on flat 5 subs, okay? But anyways. Okay, and then to get out of this, so I can get back to my key, the second time through, I jump to a G7 sus 4, a G9 sus 4, and takes me right back to the intro section, okay? And that's pretty much how the song works, right? So check out the analysis for it and listen to the demo, and I'll put the analysis there so you can see exactly what I did, all right? So I just want to say that the workbook is looking pretty good. You need to download it, and in the workbook what I did is I put several pages of where you can fill in what all the diatonic chords are and the secondary dominant chords. So it's a good way of testing yourself, right? It's a good way to practice. If you print out a couple copies, you can work on it 10 or 15 minutes every day. And you don't need a guitar to do it, so you can do it when you have a little bit of time on your hands. All right? So that should help you. Remember, diatonic chords, and today was secondary dominants. We'll get to borrowed chords and then like modal harmony, okay? And that's a little bit different too, all right? So work on it. If you come up with a song, send it to me. I'd like to hear it. All right? So have a nice day. Goodbye.